My 29 female, boyfriend 25 male says he doesn't get jealous because no other man would want me. They try to tear down your self-esteem so that you can never think you can do better, which is the quite opposite because they know you can do better and they try to gaslight you into thinking that this is the best you can do. I've been dating my boyfriend for 5 months now and he has a very blunt personality. We live in Korea for context. He is Korean and I am not. Most Korean women are slim and petite. I'm short, stocky, and recently, because of a hormonal imbalance, I've gained a lot of weight. I am now on a realistic meal plan designed by a dietitian, with my hormone issue kept in mind. As well as this, I go to a boxing gym 3 times a week and walking 40 minutes every day. Today, my boxing trainer posted a video of me on Instagram doing the training, and the caption was, "She is growing in strength every day. She is beautiful, and after her diet, she'll be the most beautiful." I showed my boyfriend just because I felt like a badass doing the boxing training. I am not sporty or well coordinated at all. And he laughed and said it's a marketing tactic. I agreed with that. Then suddenly he said, "I see your inside, that's why I'm with you, not because of your outside. But I'm not worried about anyone stealing you because no other man will ever just see your inside and not the way you look on the outside." The statement hurt me a lot because while I'm overweight, I don't think I'm necessarily unattractive. I take pride in my clothing, my hair, my makeup, and always try to present myself as best as I can. Before I met him, I also went on plenty of dates. I guess I want to know, what would you do in this situation? This isn't the first time he has made comments about my body. His nickname for me is the Korean word for fatty, but it never bothered me much until he said what he said. My self-esteem is on the ground. Oh, she has updates. Thank you all for the comments and advice. I really appreciate it. I have spoken to him and have decided to take a step back from the relationship. I want to concentrate on my weight loss and fitness journey, and I need to be in a positive headspace for that, which I can't be with him. Some people have mentioned the cultural aspect, and I agree. It is a cultural issue, but it isn't something I'm used to. I have never had the men in my life talk to me that way, so I can't just chalk it all down to culture. I saw a few comments mentioning the whole K-pop/K-drama fantasy, and what did I expect? I have lived and worked in Korea for almost 5 years. I am very much aware of the beauty standards, culture, and language. This is my first serious relationship since living here. I just happened to meet a Korean man. He was in my proximity, we hit it off, and then he changed. I wasn't expecting a K-drama romance. I was just expecting a romantic partnership.
Would I be wrong if I went on vacation instead of my brother's wedding? My brother Tom, 36 male, and I, 26 female, have never had a really solid relationship. This is due to our age gap and the fact that we didn't spend much time together. And by the time I was old enough to develop a personality, he was moved out of the house. Well, for the last 2 years, my brother and his fiancée, Sarah, 32 female, have been planning their wedding. It's coming up in September and I was asked to be a bridesmaid. I figured I was only asked as a courtesy since I'm her soon-to-be sister-in-law, but I still took it serious. I have been a bridesmaid for the last 2 years, and just a few weeks ago, I managed to save up to buy the $800 dress. Overall, in the last years, between the group outings to parties to dinners to lunches and clothes, I've spent thousands of dollars. And eventually, all the girls in the wedding and I became extremely close and I started getting hyped for the wedding. But Sarah recently got close with her brother's wife, Becky, 30 female, and told me she wants her to be a bridesmaid instead. Would I be wrong if I go on vacation instead of my brother's wedding? It did break my heart a little, but it's her wedding and it's not my place to tell her how to run it, so I said it was fine. But I did go to my brother's house to pick up the bridesmaid dress and was going to see if I could return it. Sarah was completely appalled and said that Becky was going to wear it because she and I are the same size. I said that would be fine, but they'd have to pay me $800 for it. That's when Sarah said that Becky couldn't afford it and I should just be nice and let her use it and said I could keep it after the wedding. I explained I'm not just giving away the dress and I'm not ever gonna use it after the wedding. After some bickering back and forth, I ended up taking it and leaving. My brother and Sarah tried to compromise and said I could be the assistant flower girl and I felt offended. Then they offered $250 for the dress and once again I said no and returned it. I understand it's their wedding, but they're extremely disrespectful to me and I don't need to deal with it, so I'm not going to the wedding. Instead, I'm going to Miami.
Storytime about how my high school principal tried to date me after I graduated. TW, if you think this is gross, don't watch. And disclaimers is not my story time. It's been 10 years since this happened, but when I was in high school, I was really popular. I was in the cheerleading squad, the badminton team, the volleyball team, and drama club. All the teachers knew me and I got along with almost all the students. I never had any problems with girls or guys. My high school principal was a huge history buff, and so was I. One day I went to his office and asked him if I could start a history club. He was really impressed by this and he said yes. I started asking students if they wanted to join and and mostly it was only boys. And these were the boys that I knew had a crush on me, but I made a promise to my parents that I would focus solely on school and not boys. So that meant no boyfriends for me, and I was totally fine with that. I wasn't boy crazy or anything. I really just wanted to get into a good college and make my parents proud. After I formed the club, the principal asked me if he could sit in on some of the sessions. I said, of course. Our history club would get together every Wednesday, and he would always show up without fail. I mean, obviously, I thought that he was interested in history, and he just wanted to share this experience with us, but clearly I was wrong. After a few weeks, things were getting a little strange. When it was my turn to read, I would always notice him staring at me. And he also brought up the fact that there were only boys in the club. I explained to him that they probably just had a crush on me and that at least it was a way to get them into the club. He told me I needed to find girls because I was too much of a distraction for the boys. But the way that he said it just sounded like he was really jealous. I did my best to get girls in the club, but literally nobody wanted to join. After a few days, I realized that maybe the best thing for me was just to cancel the club. I was already in so many other clubs, and I didn't want to sacrifice my grades. I basically told the guys that we weren't going to have the club anymore, and they all said that was totally fine. But when I told the principal, he flipped out. He started yelling at me and told me that if I didn't keep the club going, that I would never make it in life. He said I wasn't being responsible and that I was letting down the club. So then I was basically forced into continuing the club. But then things got even stranger. He started showing up to every single get-together. And every time that it was over, he would ask me if he could walk me to my car. I mean, at first I thought he was just doing it so that I could be careful, I guess. But we were still on school property and I'm pretty sure nothing was gonna happen to me. That's when he started asking me if I had a boyfriend or if I liked any boys. Part 2 is up. 2 of how my high school principal tried to date me after I graduated. Trigger warning, if you find this subject gross, please don't watch. And disclaimer, this is not my story time. That's when my principal started asking me if I was dating any boys or if I had any crushes on boys. I obviously felt very uncomfortable when he asked me this, so I simply answered no. Then he told me that I could be honest with him. That's when I told him that I made my parents a promise because I was so close to graduating high school and avoid any distractions like boys. That's when he said that I was an amazing woman and that he wished more of the female students were like me. I quickly got in my car and went home. By the way, I was 2 months away from graduating from high school. Now this is when things start to get really weird. I started seeing him around everywhere in school. Our school was pretty big, but I kept bumping into him everywhere. Every time I would see him, he would be like, "Ho ho, are you stalking me?" I would laugh it off and continue walking. One day after history club, he asked me to come to his office with him. He said that he had a surprise for me. He took me to his office and gave me a book on history. I thanked him and tried to leave as quickly as possible, but then he said, "Don't you like it?" So I stood there having to pretend that I was happy that he gave me this book, when in actuality, it made me really uncomfortable. That's when he said that he had seen me in the library reading a book on World War II, and that he just wanted to surprise me with the same book. So this was already letting me know 2 things. Number 1, he's watching me around school and at the library. And number 2, I'm not noticing when he's watching me. I was so creeped out, but I managed to keep my cool. I said thank you again and basically ran away. For the rest of that week, I tried to avoid him as much as I could. I didn't go anywhere near his office, and I avoided the library, which was one of my favorite places in the school. At this point, graduation was only a week away. I was totally wrapped up in my studies that I actually forgot about the principal. Until one day I get a friend request from him on Facebook. At first I thought it was weird, but then I accepted because I figured, well, I'm graduating, so I'm not really going to be seeing him anymore. 5 minutes after I accepted his friend request, I get this really long message from him praising me, saying all these great things about me. I didn't know how to respond, so I simply said thanks. Finally, the day of graduation came and I was forced to see him face to face. That's when he told me that he actually had another gift for me. That's when he hands me an envelope with a blank check. He had the biggest smile on his face. I told him I couldn't accept it and he got mad. Part 3 is up. 3 of how my high school principal tried to date me after I graduated. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. After he hands me the blank check, I look at it and tell him that I simply cannot accept it. That's when he gets really angry, snatches the check from me, and tells me that he'll see me later. After the graduation ceremony, I was so happy and I was with my family. That's when he walks up behind me and asks me to keep the check. My family is watching this whole thing go down, by the way. I look at him and say thank you, but no. He then introduces himself to my family. But of course, he doesn't bring up the whole check thing. We all say goodbye and my family and I go have dinner. That very night, he sends me a message on Facebook again, saying that he shouldn't have given me the check. And he felt like he had crossed the line. I actually felt really bad, so I replied asking him to not feel bad. A week later, I get a text message from him. He said that he took the liberty of looking up my phone number and that he actually really wanted to speak to me. He asked if we could meet up for a coffee, and I said yes, unfortunately. We meet up at the coffee shop, and as soon as we sit down, he starts to confess his feelings for me. He said that I was basically his dream girl and that all he wanted was a wife like me. And he also asked me if I would ever consider dating him. I was actually too stunned to speak. As soon as he realized I wasn't saying yes, he asked me not to say anything, got up and left. I ran home and told my parents everything. My parents were really angry. My dad went straight to the cops. The cops told my dad that they had complaints from other students. He apparently did the same thing to them and asked them out once they graduated. And guess what? One of them said yes. The cops even investigated him after.